I've said it. John Rothstein said it. You've probably thought it. Xavier Booker is the key to UCLA's success next season. But John Rothstein shared something interesting. A position switch might be in the cards for Booker, which completely changed things for UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each every day. It's free wherever it's your podcast, and it's on YouTube. Thanks for watching it. Thanks for being back every dayers. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So where we get started today, we're talking the importance of Xavier Booker, what a position switch might mean for him at UCLA, UCLA baseball season end, and also the year as a whole since UCLA is done competing in sports for this season. So Xavier Booker, I talked about, even teased about it in the last Locked On UCLA episode when I talked about basketball, when UCLA brought in Markell Alston. And I talked about in that first segment where UCLA is going to be defined with their ceiling from what production they get from the five. Obviously, there's Steven Jamerson. The Bruins have signed Anthony Peoples Jr. The UCLA Bruins could go small, which we saw a lot of last year with Daly or Bilodeau. Although that has a ceiling of its own, which isn't very high. You can run minutes with those guys playing small, Daly and Bilodeau. I just don't think that's a recipe for success in the long haul. So the big get for UCLA out of the portal and Xavier Booker to replace the production that would have been from a Diamata this year with him going to Michigan is him moving to the five. And John Rothstein of CBS Sports put out there on his own podcast and his own report that talking to the UCLA staff, Booker is potentially moving more to the five, right? So I've kind of thought, yes, he would be at the five, but I didn't, trying to get in there, realize there's more of a switching of a position that could unlock or unleash something more for Booker than what he was at Michigan State, right? I remember I talked to my Locked On Spartans guy, Matt Sheehan, you've seen him on the show, and he gave me more of a detailed approach as to what Michigan State did. It was a tough-nosed coach in Tom Izzo, obviously. He rides his players hard, and the difference was, why would Booker go to something that is similar to Michigan State in terms of culture, in terms of tough-nosed coaching, if that didn't work for 2 years as a McDonald's All-American, as a highly coveted recruit out of high school? But what Mick Cronin is trying to do, maybe that switch to the five for him, I believe John Rothstein shared this, was more space. And Booker presents something different, right? He presents a different matchup. This is not a back-to-the-basket unicorn-type player like a Diamata could have been for UCLA. This is a little bit more athleticism, hopefully a bit better rim protection consistently than maybe Mata could have provided, although he was pretty good in his sophomore season. What Booker brings into year three of his college career is somebody who could step out and hit the three. Booker did not do that consistently, but the thought process is Booker can come out and have a three-point shot or have some sort of space rather than being a four, having a lot more space as the five and using his athleticism as a 6'11" Indiana kid that could bring something different that UCLA did not have the five. Now, Bilodeau was a stretch five. If Daly was, that'd be something different. I know Jamerson, hailing from San Diego, would be a unique backup big, but Booker is something that, when unlocked, could be very special if he is to find that at UCLA. You can look and see the amount of times he started in his last year at Michigan State. 3 times, the first 3 games of the seasons, Monmouth versus Kansas, Niagara, all right? Those are the 3 teams he played against, and in those games, he would have combined 5 for 22, 5 or more shots on all of those, 1 for 11 from 3, and then Tom Izzo never put in the starting lineup again after he scored 11 points in his first 3 games all starts. Only once did he play more than 20 minutes, largely around 15 to 20, and even when he started games, he wasn't playing half the game. UCLA is going to need him to play a bulk of the game. You would think. I'm not sure what they're expecting if he doesn't play at least 20 minutes per game. Rothstein put in this number about how when Booker played just a bit more than close to 15 to 20 minutes, he was more of an 8-point guy, decent rebounding guy. And Here's the career numbers for Booker at Sparty. He started 3 games last year, averaged 12 minutes, averaged 4 points per game, and brought in a free throw shooting percentage of 78%, shot 41% from the field, 23% from 3. So his numbers from 3 his sophomore year were not that good. Rebounding-wise, averaged about 2 boards per game. What he did his freshman year, 3 points per game, had much better three-point numbers, 33%, better shooting numbers overall with a lot less attempts. And his free throw numbers, smaller, but 63% with about a rebound and a half per game. So with a lesser sample size, with more efficient three-point shooting, you could see something in the likes of a 35%er if he makes those strides, takes maybe less shots than he did last year and takes open shots, could be a sneaky 35% shooter who can make from 3 a couple of threes and some spot-up opportunities. But you have a guy of that size that could shoot, not saying he's a shooter, but somebody who could shoot the 3, and maybe with more space, more opportunity, and maybe less relied upon. I'm not sure what Cronin's offensive thought is about him. If you bring him into a 10-point per game player and a 5 rebounds, although I know you need a lot more from the 5, you absolutely do. But just that increase from him would be spectacular. As much as Mata was a huge, huge development for UCLA, his numbers, if you actually looked at his averages, didn't say something otherworldly. We obviously saw the tape. You could see just in his 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, they were different. But Mata's game is not Booker's game. And hopefully Booker could play more to a style that's easy to use for Mick Cronin. Because we saw that when Mata wasn't playing. We're like, why isn't he playing? Now you can go to all the different stories, all the different excuses thrown from either side. Booker is a player that would fit Cronin's more athletic need on the defensive end, hopefully an ability to stretch the ball if he's got space, maybe work with that space, drive to the hole, get a couple of buckets, spot up and hit a couple of threes, and then you just let Donovan Dent go to work, all right? You let somebody go and have a lob opportunity at the rim. You have the shooter on the wing in Sky Clark. You have the opportunities from Bilodeau, from Daly, to Jamar Brown, to Trent Perry, who's all going to get minutes. And that's where Mick Cronin's going to lean a lot on his guards. You get some semblance of a production from Booker. And if you get any production from the 5, UCLA is going deep in the NCAA tournament to win a Big Ten championship that they were predicted to be top 3, top 4 last year. That's the same idea this year. Top 15 in the country, averaging around the bracketology from Joe Lunardi, preseason top 25s. You can even look at our own Locked On network. The idea is UCLA top 25 are unranked, or are they top 10? Right? The divide is different, and the thing is the same. The X factor is Xavier Booker. It is. And with his position switch from what he did to MSU to UCLA could be different. And it could be something that unleashes his potential. And that doesn't need to be 20 and 15. That doesn't need to be 15 and 12. But 10 to 8, something of that mindset where they're not getting nothing out of the center spot, with production from the rest, and UCLA is a good team. They already are going to be a solid team. Just something right there from that spot will make them a team to watch and to be feared and a formidable foe for all to face. Next, we'll talk UCLA baseball. Their season came to an end in the Men's College World Series, finally wrapping up their team sports here in this 24-25 academic year. Now, what's next? We'll talk about UCLA for next year a little bit, and how did that season come to an end against Arkansas on Locked On UCLA? You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Because Monarch Money, it's not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track your accounts, investments, spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And when you start using Monarch, I realize, wait a minute, how much am I spending on food out? Like, whoa, that's a little bit too much. And I like the entertainment factor of going to games, all that stuff. No. Let's budget smarter and save more. So you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Cruising on into the second segment, we're talking UCLA baseball, the team that lasted the longest out of all the UCLA sports. UCLA ends their academic calendar year for sports. We'll talk about that more as a year in review in the next segment. UCLA baseball sees their season come to an end at the Men's College World Series in Omaha with the rain delay, the lightning delay, pushing the Bruins into a tough position. You get to the winner's bracket. I was hoping that with the day off, that could help set up their bullpen. But instead, despite jumping out to a 3-0 lead against LSU, next thing you know, LSU came back and took the lead. Then we headed into a delay, postponed to the next morning. UCLA to play one game early and then play later that same day against the likes of Arkansas, who was the highest seed remaining in the tournament, although playing out of the loser's bracket. And UCLA fell to Arkansas after some early opportunities for the Bruins. Arkansas kept them off the board. UCLA tried to steal home, got thrown out at the plate, changed the complexion of the game, and it was the Razorbacks who, with their Pig Sooie chance, go up 2-0 in the first and turn it into a 7-3 victory for Arkansas, and UCLA is trailing 7-0 into the last inning. In the end, this is one of those games where finally John Savage's lack of pitching depth hurt him. Lack of starting pitching depth. He was able to piece together a bullpen, and you have to applaud the job that John Savage was able to do, because this is a team that did not get a lot of innings from their starting pitching, all right? You see, maybe you've watched a lot of Dodger games, you're like, man, they can't have any starting pitching. They get no production. UCLA, because they were good swinging the bats, they could score a lot of runs. You have some of the best players production-wise in the country at the top of their order, led by Rock Chalowski in the 2-hole. But even then, Rock Chalowski didn't have the biggest College World Series. The Bruins were still able to piece together a team that was a co-Big Ten regular season champ, made it to the final of the Big Ten tournament, and then through 6 wins, I believe, over tournament teams in the regular season, beat 5 separate teams in the NCAA tournament, got themselves to within a win of the Final Four of all of college baseball if things go their way against LSU. They were up 3-0 in that game after the top of the first. You get out of that first inning of 3-0, I like their chances. Instead, against the Tigers, they give up 4, a big 3-run bomb in a park that's tough to give up home runs in, over at whatever they call that field in Omaha now. And then you keep working. The Bruins just couldn't do it against Arkansas. When you got the bases loaded and 1 out, and then the bases loaded with 2 outs, you had West attempt to steal home when he probably could have stolen home earlier in the inning, but a quick throw at home, and West was thrown out at the plate. You take your chances. I like crazy aggressiveness. It was just a shocking thing to see how UCLA softball season kind of ended on a steal of home from Texas Tech, and that UCLA baseball season's ending because of a steal at home that they got thrown out on. Isn't that funny? It came down to the College World Series where one team on the women's side saw a steal of home kind of end their season. I know it was a home run given up that gave way to the winning runs to score for Texas Tech later in that game in the winner's bracket. But for UCLA to see their season end, not exactly in the first inning, but the biggest threat they had to take the lead, to jump out in front against Arkansas, and instead they couldn't do so. It was a tall order for a team that didn't get bulk pitching after Arkansas literally had their entire pen saved because Gage Wood threw a 19-strikeout no-hitter against Murray State, utter dominance. If that's the second arm you're throwing in the College World Series, then that means they have elite stuff. All right. And it was expected to be an Arkansas LSU battle to get to the CWS final anyway. But now the winner of that will go play Coastal Carolina, who's won 26 games in a row. So I just think those teams at this moment are another class of their own than UCLA. But that doesn't make the season any less spectacular. From what, a 19-33 season to hosting a regional, being able to, because of an upset, host a super, get through that, fight through the lack of a home ballpark. This was a masterful job at the helm of the UCLA program by John Savage. I can't say that enough. From the growth that the players did overall as a program, you have to be impressed for a team that was practicing at a high school, all right, at UCLA, practicing at a high school in the local LA area, and for them to go from there to now making it to Omaha, that has to be something to be remembered. The good thing for UCLA, though, a season in which they finished 48-18, 31-7 at home, 22-8 in the Big Ten, winning record on the road, winning record in neutral site games. This is what they have potentially coming back. All right. This is the opportunities they have. You go Rock Chalowski, one more year of eligibility before the draft, expected to be number 1 in 2026. He's a sophomore, winning almost every Player of the Year award, potential Gold Glove awards. He's a sophomore. And if you're playing college baseball, you got to play at least 3 years once you commit to play D1 college baseball. So he's got a year of eligibility. Cody Delvecchio, who missed the majority of the season because of being ineligible, he is a junior. I wonder if that's a situation after all that's been worked on and worked through. Not really sure how deep that ineligibility goes. If you bring him back, that's a veteran pitcher, but he's a junior. Phoenix Call, sophomore. You keep going. Roman Martin, who broke out during the tournament. He has another year. Keep going. Ian May, redshirt junior. If that's a guy you want to keep as your bulk starter, your reliever, your number 3 starter, he still has another year. Peyton Brennan, redshirt sophomore. All right. So if you're in your 3rd year, you could get a look in the draft. You could go back and forth, push that for more money if someone drafts you. But Peyton Brennan had a really good postseason. Maybe somebody's going to give him a look. Landon Stump, sophomore. Wyland Moss is a freshman. You're going to see the end of the career for AJ Salgado coming from Cal State LA as a redshirt senior. But you continue on. Easton Hawk, freshman. August Souza, graduate. Blake Balls is a sophomore. You keep going with Dean West is a sophomore. Mulavai Lavu is a sophomore. Duggar, another catcher, is a sophomore. All the way down the list, sophomore, junior. Only a couple of those guys you're expecting to leave. And some of those guys who are older players are the pitching staff where John Savage is going to have to overhaul it anyway. All right, let's go back to the numbers because UCLA, the position players, the core of this group that got this team here can return. Now you have to battle the NIL, revenue sharing wars, the transfer portal, in a couple of cases, the MLB draft, but a lot of which will be the portal if an SEC team comes calling. Again, if an SEC comes calling, we've seen that for former UCLA players as well. If this team comes back, they will be here next year competing for a national championship if they get a couple of things to go their way. If the position players return, the Bruins got to go to the portal or develop some current players or hope that their incoming high schoolers can change the trajectory of the pitching staff. As a whole, UCLA's team ERA was 4.5. 4.5. You're not going to see many teams get to the College World Series with an ERA that high for the team like UCLA. That takes a team that can play really good defense, score a lot of runs, take advantage of some plays like UCLA did, one of the best at turning double plays this year. One of the best infields at turning double plays in the entirety of the country, and that's why UCLA could get out of rallies, limit the damage, give up 1 to 2 runs, and then momentum flips. UCLA was really good at big game comebacks. They didn't need those in the postseason because they were front runners in the majority of their games, like Murray State, Fresno State, Arizona State, Irvine, UTSA. They trailed 2-0 early and jumped on the board. So the Bruins got good innings from the bullpen, some solid starter innings in October-like roles that you would see in Major League Baseball, 2 to 3 innings, and then let the bullpen go the rest of the way. You just can't live like that, I think, going forward. Because the Bruins, this regional play, the way that this is set up in the college postseason, to get through a regional, if you don't have pitching, you're kind of lucky sometimes. Well, UCLA dominated, so they didn't get lucky. They were just dominant. And the Supers, it's 2 out of 3 in 3 days. Okay, that's a lot of games in a row. But even in Major League Baseball, they still get a day off. Other than the wild card series, which is still very new, even in the postseason, they get 2 games, day off, and a game. You don't play 4 games in 3 days with a doubleheader or 5 games in 3 to 4 days. That just doesn't happen. So at the college level, not even at the high school level, only in really the college level, other than travel baseball, do you see a team that has to go through all this stuff. All right? And baseball specifically is hit the hardest. That means John Savage needs to get a pitching staff that can work bulk innings while not giving up so many runs. The team's batting average against was 246. And some of the starters that they used the most had a high batting average against. And that's with the team that's got a really good shortstop, a really good left side of the infield who has some range. This is an infield with range and is very good, if you think about that. Sometimes you wonder, okay, if a team is playing at a bad ballpark, it's got a bad defense, can't get to many ground balls. No, This is a team that's got a good range, can turn a pair quite a bit, and they still gave up a bunch of hits, still gave up a bunch of runs, and were able to get to Omaha. So that is an emphasis for development, transfer portal, recruiting. Whatever those three can help fortify the starting staff, fortify the pen, you mix it together. Maybe we'll see Easton Hawk turn into more of a starter with some electric stuff, and he could be a Saturday to Friday night guy. And you're like, whoa, this guy came out and throwing 6-7 dominant innings. That's something that could happen. We'll find out what that looks like next year. But for UCLA to compete and return, that's what they need. With these position players returning position players, and then you got to find something on the pitching staff. That just means John Savage did a great job with what he had in turning into this team with a young team, a largely young team that was probably a year away from Omaha, got them now and could get them into a return trip in 2026 if all goes well. All right. And speaking of successful years, let's talk about the teams that did or did not have successful years. Year in review. We're here in mid-June. What does it look like now that UCLA, for pretty much everything, they've had graduation, sports are done. What does it look like? Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. So here we are wrapping up Locked On UCLA today. What did it look like? What did it look like in your first year in the Big Ten? I've talked about this a little bit, but now that it's officially over, how did this first season in the Big Ten go? Let's bring this up again. All right, UCLA baseball and softball, the only programs, the only school in the country that had both those teams make it to the respective College World Series was UCLA. In softball, UCLA got in the winner's bracket. In baseball, UCLA got in the winner's bracket. Now, we finally saw a new champion in softball. Hopefully, we'll see a non-SEC champion in baseball. Go Coastal Carolina. Come on, Chanticleers, take down those SEC powers. But UCLA got to both. And in an expected year, as we're kind of going backwards to the beginning of the year, two sports in a conference that is not defined by their baseball or softball programs, UCLA, that's probably a sport you dominate. As a West Coast school with the better weather, teams that can play and practice all year round and play your season opening games in early to mid-February, or, really early in the season in some cases. In the West Coast, when it's mostly sunny in Southern California, even though there is some wet weather early in the year, you have a significant advantage at UCLA. Just in Los Angeles in general, just in Southern California, which is why it's been so devastating to see the lack of West Coast success in these sports. Softball, it's been Oklahoma, and in baseball, it's been the SEC. UCLA, if they want to return to glory, now that as tough as the Pac-10, Pac-12 was, look at all those teams that were making it to the College World Series. Arizona, Oregon State, UCLA. Those teams would be finishing first through fourth if they're in their same conference right now, and the Pac-12 would have like a 16 bid because USC made it, Oregon made it. That's like 5 teams. Washington was on the verge. If they'd have to play some crappy teams in the Big Ten to hurt the RPI, maybe with some better record they could have got in. While UCLA now sits in a conference in the Big Ten that Iowa, who was a game away from winning the Big Ten regular season championship, was nowhere near considered. That's the difference, right? A bigger conference, a schedule where it's not balanced, where UCLA did not play Iowa. Iowa was able to rack up wins. They found themselves competing for a Big Ten championship, but because UCLA's pedigree, who they beat in the in the non-conference and during the conference season against a tough slate of West Coast teams and good ball clubs, the Bruins were easily in. Softball, continuing to dominate. Even though Kelly Inouye-Perez needs to work on things in the transfer portal with players leaving, going to other places, they were successful despite the travel at the moment. And I wonder what that looks like for. But those are two sports we expected to dominate. Go back to women's basketball. They got to their first Final Four in the NCAA era of women's college basketball. You could talk about the late 70s when they were winning a championship prior to the NCAA era. But it looks different now that the conference is not as deep. UCLA and USC were the cream of the crop. Oregon, not the same since Ionescu left. Washington, still not there on the women's side. The Bruins with Corey Close has brought Lauren Betts, a big-time freshman class, and they got there. They finally took down USC in the Big Ten tournament game and title game, were 1-2 in the Big Ten regular season, and it wasn't because some Big Ten team beat them, no. And then they got to the Final Four, where UConn became a team that rose to the top with Paige Beckers and Sarah Strong and Fudd. And Gino Auriemma brought his Huskies to the top once again. Where UCLA sits there and they're like, okay, we're on the verge. They have a super talented team. They're expected to be a top 1, 2, 3 team in the country and dominate the conference. And now with Juju's injury, UCLA is clearly the Big Ten preseason, regular season favorites to win the championship, depending on when and if Juju's able to get healthy. And still, those are the 2 teams you'd expect to win the conference anyway. So you're like, okay, UCLA won a conference tournament championship. The travel didn't hurt the women. They were the last undefeated team in the country with lots of travel. You like how that went. A sport and a conference where you thought, okay, that's an opportunity for UCLA to play well in women's college basketball. Not that they weren't doing well in the Pac-12, but that slate in the Big Ten is not the same as Stanford when their coach was there. USC, even Arizona a couple years ago was that close to winning a national championship against Stanford, where it was an all Pac-12 final. That's how tough the conference was in the Conference of Champions. Men's basketball got a top 4 seed. They finished better than they did a year prior when they didn't make the tournament in the last year of the Pac-12 as it was originally known. And then you could argue, yes, UCLA didn't do as well as expected. They didn't get to a second weekend. They only were a top 4 seed, and they were a 3-way tie and needed a tiebreaker of sorts just to get to that bye in the Big Ten tournament, and still only earned a 7 seed. Big Ten play, much tougher in certain aspects when it comes to a night in, night out basis for UCLA men's basketball. Packed arenas, filling out Northwestern, filling out Illinois, filling out you name it, and they'll come pack out Pauley Pavilion. It was just a different ballgame. But the Bruins still had a successful season, but if you're going off the UCLA legacy, what Mick Cronin's trying to do, what the expectations I set on them, what other people said on them, they did fall short. Men's basketball did this season. And as much as Mick Cronin complained about the travel, you would say that was an eyesore with how UCLA on the traveling in the Big Ten. That was just, you could do better, Big Ten. Why have Michigan and Michigan State travel differently? Why have UCLA and USC not be true travel partners when they're going on the road or teams are playing SC once and then UCLA or, with a couple of days off? What is with this scheduling? It's TV, yes, it's Big Ten. It could be better. Absolutely could be better. One thing you've noticed here is, have I said anything about a national championship? Well, the gymnastics team was a team that won the Big Ten championships, found themselves on the verge of winning a national championship, fell just a little short in second. The UCLA Bruins did, though, win the Big Ten championships, I believe, in March, early 2025. Still, Big Ten championship, solid there, but no national championships. Keep going around. You're like, okay, men's tennis, they won a Big Ten tournament title, didn't win anything overall, but that's where UCLA was successful. And you're like, okay, another Big Ten title. Looking up and down, everything. UCLA did a lot of things football-wise in the transfer portal. They're winning the offseason. But during the regular season, everybody was laughing at Deshaun Foster at the Big Ten Media Days. We're from LA. How they started. Indiana beat them. You're like, what? This is your first Big Ten game? This is Indiana. Only for Indiana to make the playoff. UCLA to finish off well. And the Bruins, despite one of the most rigorous travel schedules you've seen from a non-conference to a conference traveling perspective football-wise, put together a solid year that nearly led them to a bowling campaign. If they won one of the last 2 games prior to the Fresno State game, UCLA would have gone bowling with a pretty rough start against some scrappy Big Ten teams. And I think the Bruins might be in for a little bit more success in 25 and hopefully 26 and beyond. But Deshaun Foster is building, and you're seeing the national recruiting pipeline build for Deshaun Foster, which is a little more emphasis of local recruiting going across the country. And maybe with all that opportunities and the eyeballs in UCLA could lead to something in the future. Just didn't do so in Deshaun Foster's first year, which was tough. Keeping Chip Kelly's guys, replacing an offensive coordinator, and becoming a first-time head coach. All tough things to do while navigating a new conference. Didn't lead to a successful year, but I think it's building to something. Then, where did the national championship come in this year? Well, the UCLA men's volleyball team fell a little bit short. Women's volleyball, no, but men's volleyball does not compete in the Big Ten. Men's water polo competes in the MPSF. They did win the national championship in 2024, defeating USC. It's just UCLA, that was, one of their only national championship appearances in the last year plus. If you're talking about, what have they done in the last calendar year? That was it. It just did not lead to a Big Ten championship. So if you're looking at a Big Ten year, UCLA has not won a championship as a Big Ten program yet. They've been in the Big Ten, but that didn't affect their men's water polo. They've been in the Big Ten, and they almost won in gymnastics. They're close to women's basketball, close in getting to deep parts of the baseball tournament in the College World Series, or softball getting to Oklahoma City. But they have yet to win a championship as a Big Ten team. Even soccer, they went all the way to the top, creamed the crop in the Big Ten, but fell early yet again in the NCAA tournament. If you go to the early parts of women's soccer, men's soccer, if you go way back to August into December, if you're looking about the College Cup, right? A couple of early exits, or at least for the women's soccer team. So some success. So it's not like it's impossible to win the Big Ten. They're like, it's too tough to win. And so they can win the Big Ten. Hasn't yielded super postseason results other than some sports. You're like, they stepped up. In the sports where we expected them to step up, women's basketball, baseball, and softball, all led to super successful years, taking a step in the right direction. Now the next thing is raising the banner and hoisting the trophy. That's where they had for a whole year. Lots of travel, hopefully a little bit smarter scheduling from the Big Ten as a whole, and that can lead to more success later in the season for these UCLA programs. And hopefully a lot more championships in 25 to 26, all right? And until next time, there's more basketball, more football to talk about. Need your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.